Time to take a look back at the week's political headlines. We will discuss Trump's latest court case in depth in just a minute.
But first, there appears to be a rift between Governor J.B. Pritzker and Mayor Brandon Johnson about how to respond to the influx of migrants coming from Texas. So joining us now, the host of the Political Report, Paul Lisek. Hey, Paul, how are you?
Hey, Mike and Patrick, good to see you.
They're at loggerheads again, the governor of Illinois and the mayor of Chicago. And February 1st is supposed to be the deadline for the migrants to move out. What's going to happen?
Micah, that's right. And, this has been kind of a tension, I think, that's been behind the doors. It's sort of coming more public right now. You're absolutely right. February 1st is the day that, under the mayor's order that these migrants must leave those temporary shelters, but there's nowhere to send them. So at some point, I don't see how he doesn't lift that order and that requirement. Basically, the mayor is looking to the governor and saying, you got to find some place to put them. We need your help. And the governor is saying, well, wait, you need to guide us and tell us what you need. And the mayor is responding by saying, well, you got to go outside of Chicago. So I think this is a battle that's going to continue. I don't know how it resolves without some assistance from surrounding areas and areas outside of the city. But right now, it's a discussion between them. And you're right, they pretty much have until February 1st to figure it out unless the mayor lifts his order.
Paul, let's talk about the former president, Donald Trump, and that award the jury gave to E. Jean Carroll. Their attorneys, or her attorneys, were asking for $10-11 million. She got that and a whole lot more. What's the message behind that?
Yeah, Patrick, well, that 10 or 11 million you talked about were the compensatory damages the lawyers asked for, and that they did get that. But why people are talking about 83 million is because they then awarded a whole lot more millions as punitive damages. A couple of things about that. Number one, this was a damages trial only. And so after the trial, the former president's lawyer, Alina Habba, did a press conference where she said this was unfair. I wasn't allowed to present evidence to show that we didn't have the dress. And basically, she went back to the liability piece of this to say Trump had never done any of this. What people need to understand, lawyer hat time, this was not a trial about liability. That happened last year, and a jury found him liable for what had happened. Today was about damages only. So this was a money trial. There was, every time they tried to introduce past evidence of what happened or didn't happen, the judge shut it down. They said the judge was being unfair. The judge was just doing what this trial was about, which was damages. The message, we all know that during closing arguments, the former president stormed out of the courtroom and then he came back. I actually am not so sure that that number would have been as high as it was if the jury wasn't subjected to the kinds of anger and moments that they had in the courtroom from his lawyers and from the former president. I personally think that showed disrespect to the jury. I think that's what may have upped the numbers. Had he just sat there kind of like any other defendant in a case, this might have been more reasonable than the numbers that we saw.
Let's talk a little bit more about the former president. He's involved with dealing with Mitch McConnell on a deal that he wants to keep the Border Patrol, which he talked about during his presidency, and add that on to the deal that President Biden's trying to make for Ukraine, money for Ukraine. Why is Donald Trump involved in this?
So Donald Trump is involved, Micah, because his eyes are towards the next presidential election. What you're talking about is such a critical issue, and people do need to understand what's going on. A bipartisan Senate committee has structured this deal. We don't know what's in it yet. We're going to find out next week. But they've structured a deal which even conservatives like Lindsey Graham have said this is the best deal that Republicans will ever see, even if Republicans control every branch of the government, including the White House. It doesn't get better than this. We don't know what the terms are. But we do know one thing that came out today, based on a comment that President Biden said, which is this deal empowers the president to shut down the border if over a 5-day period there is on the average of 5,000 migrants crossing the border. That would be enough to empower the president to shut the border down. Well, I would think that President Trump, if he becomes president again, would absolutely want that power. So you do have a lot of Republicans saying, former President Trump, why are you trying to shut this down? You would like this deal. But the former president basically doesn't want this to happen because that would end up looking like it gives Biden points, even though it's a bipartisan effort. I will say that the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, issued a letter today which said this deal, we don't know what it says, is dead on arrival in the House. Well, number one, if he doesn't know what it says, it means that he, as a leader, is not part of the discussion. That's unfortunate. But number two, one would hope that once he sees the deal, he may say, this is pretty good in the way it tightens the border and gives the power of the president to shut things down. And Biden, by the way, said today he would shut it down if necessary. A very different tone from the current president, who understands the pressure of trying to get the border under control, which it has not been since he took office.
Paul, as briefly as possible, there's a push to keep the former president off the ballot here in Illinois as well, following Colorado and Maine. Final thoughts on that? Is it going to happen?
I think it's not going to happen, and I think what's going to happen is the easy way for the board to make a decision on Tuesday when we hear it is going to be we're going to wait to hear from the Supreme Court. If the Supreme Court keeps Trump on the ballot, which I think they will, Illinois doesn't even have to deal with it. I think that's where it goes.
And what will we see on your show this week?
Hey, it's a really good show. So yesterday, I moderated a forum between the two candidates for the Illinois Supreme Court position, Joy Cunningham, the current justice, and Jesse Reyes, an appellate justice. One of them will be the new Supreme Court justice because there is no Republican challenger. So we did the forum at the Union League Club. We're going to run a part of it on the show on Sunday morning. Viewers will get to see that in a judge's race that people don't usually get to pay attention to. But what the Supreme Court does matter. We'll have political analyst Richard Gordon joining us to talk about what's ahead in the world of politics. And if I always like to plug when I make an appearance on the midday show next Thursday, I'll be talking to authors Michael Isikoff and Daniel Klaidman. I know you know those guys. They have a brand new book coming out next week. We'll be among the first shows to talk to them. It's called Find Me the Votes. You might guess it's about the Georgia election, but two top journalists, and they will join me on Thursday on our midday news.
Very good, Paul. Thank you. That's Sunday morning at 9 a.m.